Good evening, friends, and thank you very much for being here this afternoon for our regular interaction. As is usual, I will make a few announcements, following which the floor will be open for you to respond to any seek any clarifications about that. One of the announcements that I have to make relates to two of my colleagues who are here. So I have with me Secretary West, Mr. Navtej Sarna, and to his right, Mr. Vinay Kumar, who is Joint Secretary, East and Southern Africa. So what we will do is, after the announcements, Mr. Sarna will make a few comments, following which all of you can address the issues that he has to make comments on. And in addition to anything that I have announced, and after that, of course, you have the right to ask me anything else that you would like to ask. Okay, let me begin with that. The first announcement that I have to make is that the Government of India had on January 21st issued an advisory to all Indian nationals in Yemen. We would like to reiterate that now, and that is that the security situation in Yemen is fragile, with high possibility of major conflict and disturbances. We therefore urge and advise all Indian nationals who are resident in Yemen to consider leaving Yemen on a voluntary basis by earliest available commercial flights. The second announcement that I have to make relates to Prime Minister's forthcoming visit. Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi will be paying official visits to France, Germany, and Canada from 9th to 16th April. His first destination will be France from late in the night or in the evening of the 9th to the 12th. In France, Prime Minister will have meetings with President Francois Hollande. He will interact with different sections of French society, as well as the leadership there, and members of the Indian community resident in France. His second destination will be Germany. As you are aware, Prime Minister will be in Germany from 12th to 14th of April in connection with the inauguration of the Hanover Messe Festival. India is a partner country at this year's Hanover Messe. In addition to inaugurating the Hanover Messe along with Chancellor Merkel, Prime Minister will also have bilateral discussions with Chancellor Merkel and other senior leaders in Germany before his departure to his next destination, which is Canada. Prime Minister will be in Canada from 14th to the 16th of April. During this period, he will have discussions with his Canadian counterpart, Prime Minister Harper. He will interact with the business community there and also with the large Indian community resident in Canada. In each of these three countries, Prime Minister is also expected to visit other than the capitals. We are still working out those arrangements, and we will only be able to share those a little later, but we thought we will let you know the broad contours of his visit to these three places. Prime Minister's visits to France, Germany, and Canada reflect the Link West aspect of India's foreign policy. We see this as an opportunity to reinforce our strong links with each of these countries with a focus on investment and technological tie-ups. That's the second element of my announcement. The third announcement I have relates to perhaps the biggest diplomatic event that we plan to hold this year in New Delhi. This relates to the India-Africa Forum Summit. I have here with me my colleagues to explain to you the significance and import of this event, which will be held in the last week of October. With these three announcements, what I will do is I'll request Secretary West, Mr. Navtej Sarna, to make a few comments about the forthcoming India-Africa Forum Summit, after which the floor will be open for you. Secretary West.
Thank you, Akbar. Good afternoon, everybody. As JSXP has already told you, we'll have the third India-Africa Forum Summit later this year in consultation with the African Union Commission, and the dates that have been worked out for the entire summit are 26th to 30th of October. The breakup will be somewhat as follows. 26th October, you have the senior officials meeting. 27th October, you'd have the foreign ministers meeting. 28th would be the arrival of heads of state and government. And 29th would be the summit. And 30th, we would keep for bilateral interaction with various heads of state and government with our leadership. That's the programmatic aspects of the summit. Exact venues, timings, etc. We will tell you in due course. It would be useful to recollect that the India-Africa Forum Summit mechanism was put into place to give a framework to India's engagement with Africa in the present century, the functional, the economic, the political engagement with the entire continent as a whole. The first India-Africa Forum Summit was held in 2008 in India, and the second one was held in 2011 in Addis Ababa. So this will be the third one. The difference in this one is going to be that in order to fully reflect the way we are engaging the continent, we would be inviting all 54 members of Africa. Unlike in the previous summits, when the engagement was with a limited number according to a formula worked out by the AU. So this would be a first in that sense also. To give you some idea of the relationship and what we are trying to strengthen and build up, in the last 10 years or so, since this mechanism and before that was set up, but we have actually made available soft loans in terms of lines of credit of more than $7 billion to our African partners. And that forms nearly 2/3 of all lines of credit given by India in the last 10 years. Besides the loans, we have set up a number of capacity building institutions in various stages of implementation. There are 3 vocational training centers have already been set up in Ethiopia, Burundi, and Rwanda, and several others are in the pipeline nearing completion. I mention these because capacity building is one of the major planks of cooperation with Africa. And so we have, of course, a lot of people coming from Africa for training in various courses here. But when we set up a capacity building institution in Africa, then there is that much more scope for providing training to the African countries in their own country. In terms of people coming on scholarships, 22,000 scholarships have been awarded to African participants under various schemes. These include the Pan-African E-Network Project, agricultural scholarships, the C.V. Raman Scientific Fellowships, ITEC, ICCR, and other training courses. Talking of the Pan-African E-Network Project, I may tell you that that's one of our most successful projects in terms of e-medicine and e-education. and that is now active in 48 African countries and has been working very well. It was to have been handed over to the African Union in 2014, but at their request, we have continued to keep it going ourselves for another 2 years. Besides this, a number of academic and business conferences have been held in India in this framework, and there have been exchanges of parliamentarians, journalists, and scholars. In terms of trade figures, there has been a robust increase, and in last 10 years, trade has expanded 14 times from where it was. It has today crossed $70 billion US dollars with Africa. Besides trade, we have an investment from Indian entities, direct foreign investment, amounting to about $32 billion. India has also emerged as an attractive destination for African students and for medical tourism. This summit will give us another opportunity to assess our overall engagement with all of the African continent and will provide future direction to this engagement in the coming years. This is something which has been eagerly looked forward to by our partners as well as by us. So I'm sure you will, as the weeks and months go by and we reach the summit, we will have an opportunity to give you more details about the specific documents, about the specific declarations, about the various elements that will be finalized in the run-up to the summit. Thank you.
What we will do now is that I first ask you if you have any questions related to what Secretary West has said. We will then go back to any of the questions that you may have relating to the announcement that I have, and then we open up the floor for anything else. So the floor is now open for questions relating to the India-Africa Forum Summit. Yes, Ashok?
You talked about engagement with Africa, but that is not on a very robust footing as of now. First is that there are more incoming visits from Africa, and on reciprocity, we don't have the outcoming visit. Then number two is that Indian Embassy has presence only in 42 out of 54 countries. And the ITEC, which you said that the flagship program for Africa, India's flagship program for Africa, is present only in 48 countries. So how do you think that since you are inviting all the leaders of the 54 countries over here, how do you think of bridging this gap?
Thank you, Ashok. I'm actually very grateful for your points because you have added substance to what I actually said. I only did. We actually have 48 out of 54. I think it's very robust engagement. I don't know how you call it not robust. And I think VVIP visits are a very important aspect of our engagement, but they're not the only factor. If you see that the first visit the Prime Minister has made this year has been to 2 African countries, Seychelles and Mauritius. And there are other visits planned at various levels in the coming year. VVIP visits is often a question of scheduling, and it all may not happen together. But the fact that we have been focusing will become very obvious to you as we go towards the summit. And at this stage, I wouldn't share more information on that. So ITEC, as you yourself said, is active in 48 countries. India, although you discount in our interactions with other countries, we have always found a very positive recognition of the fact that India is actually represented by embassies in so many African countries. The fact that our investment is what it is, I would like you to do a comparison with some other countries, and I don't want to mention names here, but this was very positively commented upon in the in the AU summit earlier this year in Addis Ababa in the last week of January. The fact is that the Pan-African e-network is there in 48 countries, but ITEC is there, if I'm not wrong, not in 48, but in 54 countries. ITEC is always also a question of the recipient country utilizing scholarships. We give slots. Sometimes we give 100 slots to each country. That time the country may not be in a position actually to send 100 people. So I think this is one of the, permit me to say to you, but this is a kind of easy conclusion to draw that, oh, India is not fully engaged in Africa. I would request you to break it down into elements. Visits is one element, trade is another, capacity building is another, investment is another. And when you actually do that, diaspora is another, you will see the kind of deep engagement that there exists already. There is always scope for expansion, always. And the best of relationship can be upgraded. And that's what we're trying.
Yes, Ranjit?
Heads of states of all 54 member countries have confirmed their participation.
Well, I have only announced the dates today, Ranjit. Formal invitations will now go out to all three levels, heads of state and government from our leadership, foreign ministers from our foreign minister, and senior officials from our senior officials. And then we will start the process of getting confirmations.
And we will keep you informed, Ranjit.
Yeah, as we periodically will do an assessment.
Yes, Charu?
Sir, last year when the third India-Africa summit was originally scheduled to be held, we had postponed it because of concerns regarding the Ebola virus in West Africa. In West Africa, those concerns, of course, still remain. How are we, are we better prepared to handle this situation this time? What has made us decide to go ahead with this now?
Actually, if you go back, the postponement was done because there was widespread concerns around the world in terms of travel, in terms of adequate medical arrangements. And while we were prepared technically to handle that, we thought that it would not be the right atmosphere for a summit if we had to set up very extensive medical checks on arrivals on what is supposed to be a very joyous, sort of positive and a constructive engagement. We have been watching the WHO guidelines on Ebola. We have been watching other international events that have been held around the world and in Africa itself. And on the basis of a sort of considered opinion, we have taken a balanced decision that despite the fact that, yes, those concerns remain, however, the trends are looking different today, and also the fact that the overall engagement with Africa, we didn't want to put away indefinitely. It's far too important for us so we will do what is necessary to be done.
Okay, if you have any other questions on any of the two other announcements that I made, I would just preface the visit announcement with the caveat that we will have separate briefings nearer the visit on specific elements of that visit. This was just to let all of you understand the broad contours so that all of you can start preparing. There have been several who are already planning to travel along to various destinations. This will give you an idea of that. So if you have any other questions on the Yemen part, I will answer. Otherwise, we will open the floor to anything else. On Yemen? Yes.
Good afternoon. I expected good news in France during the visit regarding this plane for the army, Rafael.
I said that I will do the briefing on those elements a little later, and we will share all good news with you. Yes. Dr. Anshuman Suman. Akhilesh Suman. I always make that mistake.
Sir, Emir of Qatar is here, and in last...
I didn't open the floor for all other questions. I will open the floor for all other questions. Hold on. Yes. Manish.
सर अगर पीएम के फ्रांस एंड जर्मनी की विजिट में अगर जो जनरल अगर क्या आप हमें बता सकते हैं कि उनकी पब्लिक मीटिंग्स क्या होगी अपार्ट फ्रॉम हनोवर अगर वो पेरिस में कहीं जाएंगे या जर्मनी में?
देखिए अभी जैसे मैंने आपको बताया है कि एक एडवांस टीम अभी फ्रांस, जर्मनी और कनाडा गई हुई है और प्रधानमंत्री कैपिटल्स के अलावा हर जगह हर एक और सिटी में जाएंगे. तो ये अभी फाइनलाइज करना है हमें. जैसे कि पेरिस के अलावा एक और सिटी में जाएंगे फ्रांस में, हैनोवर के अलावा कैपिटल जाएंगे और कनाडा में ऑटावा के अलावा और जगह जाएंगे. तो ये आपको हम तभी बता सकेंगे जब एडवांस टीम वापस आ जाए. शायद अर्ली एंड ऑफ दिस मंथ वापस आ जाएंगे और उसके बारे में हम आपको डिटेल्स में बताएंगे. यस.
Sir, you mentioned the PM's visit to Canada, and you also mentioned the fact that there's a large Indian community there. So is he planning any address to the Indians in Canada on the lines of what he did in the US?
The Prime Minister loses no opportunity to engage with large number of Indians. So expect Prime Minister's engagement at different venues in accordance with what can be arranged by the local communities there working with the mission. Yes, sir.
This is related to the Hanover Messe. The theme is Make in India. So can you give us a brief idea what are we showcasing and which are the stalls or something like that?
I mentioned to you that I will do a detailed briefing on this matter in due course. At this stage, I'm here to outline the contours of the program for you. I've outlined those. If you have any specificity in terms of the contours of the program, I will reply. But on the substance, we will have detailed briefings for you. No, let's finish and then. Yemen, yes, ma'am.
Could you just give us a sense of the number of Indians that we are looking at? Because in the past, in Libya and other countries, despite advisories, till the last moment we have had a situation where ultimately the Indian government has been pressed into sending out flights to pull them off. So what is the situation like right now?
Yes. I think that's a very good question in terms of explaining to you where we stand. When the problems erupted in Yemen some years ago, we had approximately 11 to 12,000 Indian nationals resident there. When we did a head count recently, we assessed the numbers to be down to about 3,500. The majority of them are in Sana'a, which is the capital, approximately 2,500. There are some in Aden, about 250. Another significant number are in Hodeidah, about 150. And the rest are spread out in different places. So that's in terms of figures. Now in terms of categories, and you're right that we've had problems elsewhere, we have approximately 50% of these 3,500 who are nurses. We have urged them, we are working with them, Government of India is very keen, and this is the third advisory that we put out through our mission there. The second time I'm articulating it, but on the 19th of March, we had put out another advisory through our embassy in Sana'a. We did once on the 21st of January, the second on 19th of March, and the third now. We hope that through you, we can communicate the seriousness of the situation there and advise everyone to leave as long as it's possible. On, yes.
There is a talk of military intervention from GCC in Yemen. Do you support it, especially in view of the Qatar MS visit?
The talk that you hear, I haven't heard. That said, we keep monitoring the situation, and we will articulate positions based on how the situation evolves, not on the basis of kite flying. If there are no further questions on this, no, Ashok, you're over. You're the first. If you have no other questions on this, I will open the floor for any other questions. And I think Dr. Akhilesh Suman had asked. And
in the last briefing, you have mentioned that when Amir of Qatar will be here, there will be opportunities open up for India as well as investment from Qatar. So can you give us an idea what opportunities open up today?
During the talks between Prime Minister and the Amir of Qatar, there were three broad economic engagement that we focused on. One was investments into India. From the conversation and the positive tone of the Emir of Qatar, we see that there is significant scope for moving ahead. For example, he did mention that he trusts the economy of India. He also added he trusts the Prime Minister's vision for development of India. He felt that it is now time for Qatar to look seriously in terms of creating. He did say that he is going to look at an institutional mechanism which can help in speeding up this process. He will go back and work out an institutional mechanism from their side which is able to identify quickly projects which are of interest to them. One of the areas that we flagged was that we have two forms of projects available. One is ongoing projects or in ongoing sectors. For example, defense, railways, and highways. These three were flagged as largely government projects where there are secure returns much higher than what would be available, as well as that these are of a ongoing nature, so that you are aware these are not greenfield projects. These are projects where there is a history of working on them. These were three areas. The second element was defense sector. Prime Minister outlined his vision of Make in India for defense, and he indicated that we are serious in substituting importing into India through defense production in India, which will also enable us to provide assistance or to provide equipment for our partners once we move down that road. So this was another element of what was discussed. A third was opportunities for Indian companies to work in Qatar. Qatar is aiming at massive infrastructure development in the context of the FIFA World Cup in 2022. And Prime Minister mentioned opportunities that could arise for Indian companies in roadways, and there are a large number of Indian companies already working there. Some of them have huge projects, goes into millions, if we total all of them, into billions. So there already exists a base, and the effort now is to build on that base. And the steps that they have taken forward is to have an institutional mechanism here in India so that Qatar can directly provide, seek opportunities and through their investment fund, invest in India. Yes, ma'am.
Akbar, India voted along with Russia at the United Nations in favor of a resolution that basically wanted to stop gay couples from getting, who are employed with the UN, from getting the same benefits as married couples. Now, my question is, I understand that India has, criminalizes homosexuality, but there were 37 countries that abstained. And we are in the august company now of Syria, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Iran, and those countries in voting against gay rights. We couldn't have abstained, is my question.
Thank you for asking that question, because I'd like to explain the context in which our vote on that matter was cast. And this is not, what we saw is the following. The United Nations had, as of until recently, a system whereby they would decide on sort of emoluments or privileges for partners or spouses depending on the law of the country from which that individual hailed. In the sense, it was that what governs you as an individual in your country will be the basis on which the United Nations would give you those benefits or perks or those entitlements. This was the established practice and had been approved by the United Nations General Assembly and accepted by every United Nations organization. What happened more recently was the United Nations Secretary General, of his own accord, changed that. So our objection was one of change by the Secretariat without consulting the countries concerned about this. So it's not as straightforward as you've made it out to be. It is a complex issue of, are nationals of a state governed by their laws or governed by decisions of others? And I think that's what was the basis on which a decision was taken to vote on that resolution. That's the substantive interpretation or substantive explanation of why we had voted on that resolution in the manner we did. Yes. Ashwini. On this? Yeah, Ashwini.
Sir, are there any details available in the India-Lanka fishermen's talks that were held?
Yeah. Well, I'll try to give you a understanding of the trajectory or the tone rather than the specific details, because, diplomacy demands that there is space for people to work. They can't work in the public glare. So let me tell you, this was the third in recent times of a discussion between fishermen's associations from India and Sri Lanka. The first was in January last year. The second was in May last year in 2014, and this was the third. So it is sequential approach to that. Our understanding of both the atmospherics as well as the receptivity during this meeting was much better compared to previous meetings. Now, what are the issues? The issues are that I think everybody understands that there is no solution just around the corner. This is a longer-term requirement that we need to address. So if that is so, the focus of the suggestions made by the Indian side is to try and see, in the interim, would it be possible to work out a via media where there could be sustainable and environmentally sustainable fishing, which would be a win-win situation for both sides. So that's the nub of the issue. They have made some suggestions. The Sri Lankan side has been, as I said, there has been greater receptivity to these suggestions. However, I understand that they will go back to Sri Lanka, and sometime in April they are having a fairly detailed conference amongst all of them to take cognizance of how they need to proceed. It is at that conference that they will discuss these suggestions, following which they will come back, or there will be a next meeting that is in May. So that's where we are on that. Yes, sir. Yes, please, hold. Let's finish. So I presume no one else has on fishermen. You have on fishermen. Yes, ma'am. Let's finish the fishermen part and then we go to. So that's easier for me.
Can you elaborate what was put on the plate for the fishermen to discuss?
Fish.
What was the offer?
Yes. Pardon?
What was the offer?
Look, I can't tell you whether it was grilled or it was or steamed or fried. All of you can give suggestions, but no, my point is, look, this is a negotiating process. In the negotiating process, suggestions are giving, as I said, the broad rubric is environmentally sustainable approaches. So how could we move to that in a phased manner? That's the approach. I will not get into the details of what those are because it's not fair for everybody to learn through you rather than through their representatives who were there. But I've given you the broad idea so that you can understand this. Anybody else on fish? We go one by one. So we finish this. Pardon? Yes. Maybe it's a red herring. Yes, ma'am.
Akbar, my question to you is that in the past 2 days, the MOS External Affairs has been in the headlines for his recent tweets after attending the Park National Day. Now, for greater clarity, could we know that what is the stand of the government? Because from the PC, it was apparent that he said that it was miscommunication and misunderstanding of the word disgust. I would expect greater clarity of what is the stand of the government, whether the government also sees it as a miscommunication or the government is embarrassed by the MOS External Affairs tweets.
Listen, the best person to explain this is the Minister of State himself. He has articulated his views repeatedly. He did it at 11 o'clock when there were issues raised the day before yesterday, and he did it again yesterday. And that's the last word on that. Now, I also want to make it very clear that he went there as the government representative. He went there based on a considered decision. He went there based on our understanding of how we approach these things. He was not the first Minister of State to go there, and he certainly will not be the last Minister of State to go on such occasions. There is a carefully calibrated approach that we follow on such matters, and government nominates a person to go on such occasions. On this instance, it was the Minister of State for External Affairs, Mr. V.K. Singh. Yes, ma'am. Yes, one by one. I'll answer all.
Sir, could we know at what time was the MOS informed that he has to represent India? Because till 6 in the evening, he insisted that he was not aware. Was it a last-minute decision to send him?
I think others are giving contrary views. I mean, you may have heard that at a certain stage. Government doesn't. I said this was a carefully considered decision, a calibrated decision, a decision taken well in time. Yes, ma'am. One by one. I will answer.
सर माय क्वेश्चन इज कि लगातार पाक उच्चायोग में कश्मीरी सेपरेटिस्ट लगातार बातचीत कर रहे हैं. आप लोगों ने पहले जो स्टैंड लिया था वो बहुत कड़ा रुख था, लेकिन अब आपका स्टैंड नरम हुआ है. तो आखिर ऐसा क्या डेवलपमेंट हुआ है इस पूरे दौरान कि आप लोगों का रुख नरम हुआ है पहले से?
Thank you very much. Let me try and explain. In diplomacy, contextual specificities are of importance. So, please assess our stances in terms of the contextual specificities rather than trying to adopt a reductionist approach and beat down diplomacy to very dumb levels. We carefully examine these situations. We take responses based on our understanding of the contextual situation, and we've taken this decision based on contextual situation, including reciprocity of who had come to the Indian Republic Day celebration some time ago, which none of you were interested in any case. Yes, I will answer. Yes.
So when is the Prime Minister likely to visit Japan, and do we get any Japan,
okay.
and when do we hear about defense-related tie-ups, if so, with the government of Japan?
Okay. We have an arrangement with Japan whereby we have annual summits. You are aware that Prime Minister visited last year for the annual summit. Therefore, this year we expect to welcome the Prime Minister of Japan during the latter half of this year. Yes, yes, Srinjoy?
So Twitter is a very recent phenomenon, but there have been other forms of communication in the past. So do you have any record of a MOS, External Affairs, speaking about disgust or duty after a visit to the Pakistan High Commission in the past?
Srinjoy, if I had an answer to your question, I would be an archivist, not a spokesperson. Even if you ask me of what my record of what I have tweeted, the 7,000 tweets that I have, I do not have that. So please don't expect me to be an archivist. I'm a diplomat. We respond to situations as they emerge. Yes, Indrani?
Was the MOS ticked off by the government for his tweets?
I have no idea what you're saying. Yes. Pardon? Yeah, are all questions on this over, or you're still wanting on this? Let's finish all.
Almost related. Actually, this is related to the Foreign Secretary's visit to the SAARC countries.
Yes.
So I want to know, actually, could you give us a sense of outcome, particularly the meeting with his counterpart in Pakistan and Bangladesh?
Yeah. I think the Foreign Secretary's visit was in the context of a SAARC Yatra, which meant that the primary focus of the interactions was how do we take forward the visionary proposals that Prime Minister had put forth in his statement during the Kathmandu summit. And therefore, there was a lot of discussion on some of those specificities. For example, the SAARC satellite. Another example, vaccine, for which India is offering to do it. A third is the South Asian University. Of course, when the Foreign Secretary visits these countries, he will certainly discuss bilateral issues. As diplomats, we take every opportunity to utilize time and space to push our interests. Therefore, with Pakistan and with Bangladesh, bilateral issues were discussed. All aspects of those bilateral issues. We have put out in the public domain what were those issues. The Pakistani side has also put out their version of it. With Bangladesh, you are aware that India and Bangladesh relationship is today amongst the best it has been. We are working with Bangladesh on a host of issues, including river waters, border management, economic ties, global cooperation in international relations, and development partnership. All these were discussed. Yes, Geeta? I will answer.
At any point, did the Minister of State for External Affairs convey to the ministry that he didn't want to or he didn't wish to attend the Pakistan National Day?
I think he's answered this question himself. Yes. He's answered this question yesterday. He said it was a government decision. That's it. Yes, anyone else? Yes, Nas.
Yeah, Akbar, in the last briefing you said India and USA have overcome the hurdles in the implementation of the nuclear deal and the administrative arrangement. And you said there was also a workshop on nuclear insurance pool. Could we just know what was the response of the companies which participated in the workshop? How feasible they found this idea?
Yeah, the workshop relates to trying and explaining what the contours and the legal configuration of the insurance approach is. And since this is a first for India, what we did was we got people from outside who have experience in this, like the French. And we also had the Indian approach outlined by the GIC, so that everybody understands that what we are doing is in accordance with broadly accepted international practice. Once that is done, it is now the next step for companies to work together amongst each other. I mentioned to you that more than 100 companies participated in that. And our understanding is that we've moved on. There are no longer any policy hurdles that are impeding nuclear cooperation between India and the rest of the world, including the United States. Now it is feasibility of the commercial viability of these things that will be addressed by the companies themselves. Policy hurdles are over. Yes, ma'am.
India and China just finished the 18th round of border talk, and Mr. Yang Jiechi also met Prime Minister Modi. So we see that in the last two visits of Chinese leadership, actually there were standoff happened in the border. So does this 18th round border talk build the confidence for India of the border situation for Mr. Modi's visit to China this time?
Yes. You're aware that in the statement that we put out yesterday, we did indicate that peace and tranquility on the border is of the utmost importance to us. This is a shared understanding with the Chinese side. And as good partners, we work together with the Chinese on this on the basis of trust and understanding. Anyone else on anything? Yes, Maria.
Yeah, thanks. On the 18th of December, Mrs. Swaraj in Parliament told about a proposal from Italy about a consensual solution on the issue of Italian Marines. Now it's 3 months, and I would like to know if there are any developments about this specific issue, about the proposal from Italy.
Since Secretary West, who handles these matters here, I will take the opportunity to ask him to respond to that.
You're right, this proposal has been received. It is presently being examined by our legal experts.
Yes.
Just one follow-up on the India-China border talks. The statement had mentioned that there would be that India and China sought to expand contacts between the border forces. Can you just give a little bit more detail? What kind of contacts are these?
You see, there is an agreement which lays down what are the mechanisms. What will be the number of places, at what levels should they meet, and with what frequency. The effort is to expand that. Levels, frequency, places. If you have no further questions, thank you very much for being here.